The problem is, you all played for the crowd. I played for the result. The rain hammered against the windows of Carlisle's, the kind of upscale steakhouse where my wife Sophie loved to parade her success. I sat at our usual corner table, watching her laugh with her friends. That sharp, cutting laugh that used to make my heart race. Now, it just made my jaw clench like a seized hydraulic cylinder. Honestly, Jake Rodriguez is sweet and all, Sophie was saying, gesturing with her wine glass. But he's just so beneath my level, you know? I mean, he fixes bulldozers for a living, while I'm closing million-dollar corporate deals. Her friend Rachel nodded sympathetically, her perfectly manicured fingers wrapped around her martini. You deserve so much better, Sophie. Someone who matches your ambition. I kept my face neutral, cutting into my overpriced ribeye while my wife of 15 years dissected our marriage for entertainment. The third member of their little coven, Linda, leaned in conspiratorially. What about that developer you've been working with? Adrian something? He seems more your speed. Sophie's cheeks flushed pink. Adrian Walsh? Oh, he's just a colleague. But yes, he's exactly the kind of man who understands drive and success. That's when I knew, not suspected, knew. The way she said his name, the slight breathiness in her voice, the unconscious smile that played at her lips. My wife was sleeping with Adrian Walsh. I set down my fork and looked up at the three women. They fell silent, suddenly aware I'd been listening. You know what, ladies? I said, my voice calm and measured. Sophie's absolutely right. She does deserve someone at her level. I reached into my jacket and pulled out 2 manila envelopes, placing them gently on the white tablecloth between the bread basket and Sophie's wine glass. Which is why she'll love life without me dragging her down. Sophie's face went pale. Jake Rodriguez, what are you? The first envelope contains divorce papers already filed with the county clerk this afternoon. The second has the deed transfer for the house. It's being donated to Habitat for Humanity tomorrow morning. I stood up, dropping 2 20s on the table. That should cover my portion of dinner. Rachel's mouth fell open. You can't just... Oh, but I can. You see, while Sophie was building her career and finding herself, I was building something too. A very detailed understanding of asset protection and equipment tracking systems. I smiled at my wife's horrified expression. The F-250 Super Duty is already on a cargo ship to Honduras, donated to a missionary group. The jewelry's at 3 different pawn shops downtown. The joint accounts were emptied this morning and distributed to various charities. Sophie shot to her feet, her chair scraping against the marble floor. You fool, you can't do this. Actually, sweetheart, I already did. You wanted someone at your level? Well, now you're free to find him. Just make sure he's got a place for you to stay tonight. I walked toward the exit, feeling lighter than I had in months. Behind me, I could hear Sophie's voice rising to a shriek, the sound of glass breaking and Rachel hissing urgent questions. My phone buzzed as I reached my truck. A text from Linda. Holy crap, what did you do with the Range Rover? I snapped a photo of the Salvation Army truck, loading the vehicle onto a flatbed and sent it back with a single word. Upgraded. The rain had stopped, and for the first time in years, the air felt clean. Carlos Martinez's heavy equipment yard smelled like diesel fuel, hydraulic fluid, and honest work. A welcome change from the sterile corporate environments I'd been drowning in. I wrapped my hands methodically around a torque wrench, the familiar ritual calming my nerves as I processed the previous night's nuclear option. So let me get this straight, Carlos said, steadying a Caterpillar hydraulic cylinder we were rebuilding. You nuked your entire marriage in the middle of dinner at Carlisle's. Not nuked, surgically dismantled. I applied precise torques to the fitting, feeling the satisfying click of proper tension. There's a difference, just like the difference between a blown gasket and a controlled pressure release. Carlos had run this heavy equipment business for 20 years, back when this neighborhood was all union shops and honest mechanics. Now it was surrounded by trendy coffee shops and boutique fitness studios. But Carlos's place remained unchanged, a sanctuary for people who understood that real strength came from building things that lasted. And you're sure about the affair? Another turn of the wrench, perfect pressure, no leaks. The way she said his name, Carlos. Plus, I've been tracking our credit card statements for months. Lunch dates, hotel charges, expensive gifts I never saw. She's been sloppy as a blown hydraulic seal. So what's the plan now? I paused, setting down the wrench and wiping my hands on a clean shop rag. Information gathering. If you want to catch a cheater, you follow the perfume and the credit card receipts. But if you want to destroy one, you follow the ego. Carlos nodded slowly. He understood the difference between fixing something and replacing it entirely. You need backup? I need precision. This isn't about muscle, it's about leverage. Just like working on a John Deere excavator. You find the right pressure point, apply the correct force, and the whole system comes apart exactly how you want it to. That afternoon, I sat in my truck outside Walsh Properties, watching Adrian through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He was exactly what I'd expected. 6'2", silver at the temples, the kind of artificially white smile that screamed expensive dental work. He drove a red Tesla Model S, wore suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and had the smooth confidence of a man who'd never been truly challenged. I followed him to the Riverside Spa, one of those places where wealthy people paid obscene amounts to feel pampered. While he was inside getting his massage, I took a casual walk through the parking garage. The Tesla was parked in a corner spot, away from other cars to avoid dings. I brought a small bag of sugar and a funnel, old-school sabotage that would take days to manifest and couldn't be traced to any security cameras. As I worked, I thought about Sophie's laugh from the night before, the casual cruelty in her voice when she'd dismissed 15 years of marriage as beneath her level. Sugar in the gas tank is a myth, but sugar in the oil system? That's a different story. Especially when you know exactly where the oil filler cap is located and understand how long it takes for crystallization to occur in a high-performance engine. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk." I responded while walking back to my truck. "We talked for 15 years. I'm done listening." "Please, I can explain everything." "The only explanation I need is in your phone records, which, by the way, make for fascinating reading." The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times before she finally sent, "You're making a huge mistake. The mistake was thinking you were worth 15 years of my life. But don't worry, I'm a fast learner." That evening, I sat in my temporary apartment, a furnished place downtown that I'd secured weeks ago under my business LLC, and opened my laptop. Sophie thought I just fixed heavy equipment, but my actual expertise was in hydraulic systems and digital tracking. I'd spent years helping construction companies identify equipment theft and unauthorized usage through GPS monitoring and diagnostic systems. Now I was hunting bigger game. Her work email was protected, but Sophie Rodriguez had always been careless with personal security. The same password for everything, automatic syncing across devices, location services enabled on every app. Within an hour, I had access to 3 months of text messages between her and Rachel. The conversations were illuminating, not just about the affair which had been going on for 8 months, but about their plans for the divorce. They'd discussed hiding assets, claiming emotional abuse, even fabricating evidence of gambling addiction to explain the missing money from our accounts. But the real revelation came in a message from 2 weeks ago. "Sophie, Jake Rodriguez has been acting suspicious lately, asking weird questions about my schedule. Rachel, maybe it's time to accelerate the timeline. Adrian's ready to make this official anyway. Sophie, I just need to be smart about it, take him for everything, and make sure he can't recover. Rachel, that's what friends are for. I've got some ideas." I leaned back in my chair, a cold smile spreading across my face. They thought they were playing chess while I was playing checkers. Time to show them the difference between theoretical knowledge and practical application. I opened a new browser window and navigated to the anonymous tip line for the State Bar Association. Sophie's law firm, Fleming & Associates, had strict policies about conflicts of interest and personal relationships affecting professional judgment. It would be such a shame if someone reported that one of their senior associates was having an affair with a client whose property deals she was personally handling. The next morning, I called in sick to the equipment yard, first time in 3 years, and began my surveillance operation. I started with Adrian Walsh's daily routine, tracking him like a piece of stolen Caterpillar machinery. Real surveillance isn't like the movies. It's methodical, boring work that requires patience and attention to detail. Exactly the skills you develop working on complex hydraulic systems, where one small leak can bring down a 40-ton excavator. Adrian's routine was predictable as a well-maintained diesel engine. Coffee at 7:30 a.m. at the same upscale cafe. office by 8:15, lunch meetings that ran long, very long. I followed him to the Riverside Spa, one of those places where wealthy people paid obscene amounts to feel pampered. While he was inside getting his massage, I installed a small GPS tracking device under his Tesla's rear bumper. Nothing illegal, just the same equipment we use to monitor company vehicles at the construction yard. But the real breakthrough came when I decided to check our joint credit card statements more thoroughly. Sophie had been using our shared American Express for her secret lunches, apparently confident that I never reviewed the bills. She was right, until now. Hotel charges at the downtown Marriott. Always the same room number, 1247. Always booked for 3 hours in the afternoon. Always paid for with our joint account while I was working 12-hour shifts maintaining Caterpillar dozers and John Deere excavators. The hubris was stunning. She was literally making me pay for her affair. I printed out 6 months of statements, highlighting every suspicious charge. The pattern was clear. Lunch meetings that cost $300, followed by hotel charges, followed by expensive gifts from jewelry stores I'd never heard of. All on days when she'd told me she was working late at the office. My phone rang. Carlos Martinez. "Jake Rodriguez, you miss work again, and I'm docking your pay." "Sorry, boss. Had to handle some personal business. I'll be in tomorrow." "Everything okay? You've been acting strange lately." I looked at the printed statement spread across my kitchen table like blueprints for a complex repair job. Just figuring out how to fix something that's been broken for a while. Some things can't be fixed, hermano. Sometimes you gotta scrap them and start over. "Yeah, Carlos, sometimes you do." That afternoon, I drove past Rachel Torres's marketing firm downtown. Torres Creative. Solutions occupied the top 3 floors of a glass and steel tower that screamed expensive overhead and inflated billing rates. Her company specialized in crisis management and reputation rehabilitation. Ironic, considering what was coming. I parked across the street and watched the lunch crowd flow in and out of the building's ground floor restaurant. At exactly 12:30 p.m., Sophie's silver BMW pulled into the valet area. At 12:35, Adrian's red Tesla joined it. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. I waited in my truck, engine running, watching the entrance like a crane operator positioning a load. Patient, precise, ready to apply pressure at exactly the right moment. At 2:15 p.m., they emerged together. Adrian's hand briefly touched Sophie's lower back as they walked toward their cars, a gesture so casual it spoke of months of familiarity. Sophie laughed at something he said, that same sharp sound that had cut through the restaurant air the night before. I followed them at a distance, maintaining the proper surveillance interval I'd learned during my Army days. 2 blocks from the restaurant, they pulled into the parking garage of the downtown Marriott. Room 1247, just like the credit card statements indicated. I sat in the parking garage, watching the elevator numbers climb to the 12th floor, then stop. My phone buzzed with a text message from Sophie. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." I took a screenshot and added it to my growing collection of evidence. By the time this was over, I'd have enough documentation to reconstruct their entire affair timeline with engineering precision. The Fleming and Associates annual client appreciation party was held at the Riverside Country Club, the kind of old money establishment where handshake deals were still worth more than contracts. I hadn't planned to attend, but Sophie's panicked voicemail that morning changed my mind. "Jake Rodriguez, please, we need to talk. Things are complicated right now. I know you're angry, but this isn't just about us anymore. Call me back." I arrived fashionably late, wearing my best suit, the one Sophie had bought me for her last promotion celebration. The irony wasn't lost on me as I adjusted the tie that had cost more than a new hydraulic pump for a John Deere excavator. The party was in full swing, lawyers and clients mingling over top-shelf liquor and catered appetizers. I spotted Sophie immediately. She was standing near the bar with Mrs. Fleming, her face tight with stress. Adrian was conspicuously absent. I grabbed a whiskey and made my way through the crowd, nodding to familiar faces. Several people looked surprised to see me. Word of our separation had apparently spread through Sophie's professional circle like news of a major equipment recall. "Jake Rodriguez," Mrs. Fleming's voice cut through the ambient chatter. "What a pleasant surprise. Sophie didn't mention you were coming." "Last-minute decision," I replied, noting how Sophie's knuckles had gone white around her wine glass. Wouldn't want to miss celebrating Sophie's professional relationships. Mrs. Fleming, a sharp woman in her 60s who'd built her firm from nothing, raised an eyebrow. Yes, well, we've been discussing some concerns about professional boundaries lately. It's so important to maintain the firm's reputation. Sophie's face flushed. Mrs. Fleming, I think there might be some misunderstanding. Oh, I don't think there's any misunderstanding at all, I interjected smoothly. Sophie's always been very clear about her priorities. Haven't you, sweetheart? Before Sophie could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught everyone's attention. Adrian Walsh had arrived, and he was clearly drunk. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his tie askew, and he was gesticulating wildly at the valet. "Where is she?" he demanded loudly, scanning the room. "Where's Sophie Rodriguez? We need to talk about this bullshit." The party fell silent. Mrs. Fleming's expression shifted from polite interest to cold fury. Adrian spotted Sophie and began pushing through the crowd like a bulldozer with a blown hydraulic line. No control, all destructive force. "There you are. What the hell did you tell people? My business is ruined. The licensing board is investigating me. My clients are canceling contracts." "Adrian, please," Sophie whispered urgently. "Not here. Not now." "Not now?" He laughed bitterly. "When then? When you've destroyed both our careers with your husband's little revenge fantasy?" I stepped forward, placing myself between Adrian and Sophie. "I think you've had enough to drink, friend. Maybe it's time to call it a night." Adrian's bloodshot eyes focused on me with visible hatred. You smug little grease monkey. You think you're so clever, don't you? I think I'm a man whose wife was sleeping with her client, violating professional ethics and personal vows. But hey, what do I know? I just fix bulldozers and excavators. Adrian swung at me, a wild, drunken haymaker that I saw coming from a mile away. 20 years of working with heavy machinery teaches you to anticipate sudden mechanical failures. I stepped aside easily, letting his momentum carry him past me. He stumbled, caught himself on a cocktail table, and sent glasses crashing to the floor. Security was already moving toward us, but I held up a hand. "No need, gentlemen. Mr. Walsh was just leaving." I looked around the silent room, making eye contact with Mrs. Fleming, then Sophie, then the crowd of lawyers and clients who were witnessing this spectacular meltdown. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, raising my whiskey glass, "a toast to loyalty, professional integrity, and the true price of betrayal. Some lessons are more expensive than others." I drained my glass and set it on the bar. "Sophie, I'll have my attorney contact yours about finalizing the paperwork. Mrs. Fleming, always a pleasure." As I walked toward the exit, I could hear the whispers starting, the urgent conversations, the sound of Sophie's career imploding in real time like an engine with catastrophic bearing failure. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, probably Rachel. "You've made a very powerful enemy," I typed back. "Get in line." The valet brought my truck around, and I tipped him generously. As I drove away, I could see Adrian in my rearview mirror being escorted out by security while Sophie stood frozen in the doorway, watching her carefully constructed world crumble like a foundation with compromised structural integrity. But this was just the warm-up. The real work was still ahead. Maya's school talent show was the last place I expected to have a revelation, but life has a way of surprising you, like a hydraulic line that holds pressure for years before suddenly failing. I sat in the back of the auditorium, watching my 17-year-old daughter perform a piano piece she'd been practicing for months. Sophie was noticeably absent, probably dealing with the fallout from the country club incident. After Maya's performance, I found her backstage, beaming with pride and adrenaline. "Dad, did you see? I didn't mess up the crescendo." "You were perfect, sweetheart. Absolutely perfect." I hugged her tight, feeling a pang of guilt about the chaos I'd unleashed. "Your mom wanted to be here, but work got complicated." Maya's expression darkened slightly. "Yeah, she's been weird lately, really stressed, and she's been staying at Aunt Rachel's a lot." That caught my attention like an unusual sound in a diesel engine. "Aunt Rachel's? How often?" "Like almost every night this week. She says you guys are working through some things, but won't tell me what's going on." Maya studied my face with the intensity of a technician diagnosing a complex problem. "Dad, are you and Mom getting divorced?" The direct question hit me harder than I'd expected. "We're figuring things out, honey, but whatever happens between your mom and me, It doesn't change how much we both love you. That's what divorced parents always say. Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. She had her mother's analytical mind, but thankfully hadn't inherited the casual cruelty that came with it. After dropping Maya at her friend's house for a sleepover, I decided to take a drive past Rachel Torres's penthouse downtown. Rachel ran one of the city's most successful marketing firms, the kind of place that specialized in crisis management and reputation rehabilitation. Her building was all glass and steel, with a parking garage that required a key card for access. I parked across the street and settled in to watch, engine idling like a Caterpillar generator on standby. Around 10 p.m., Adrian's red Tesla pulled into the garage. Interesting. 20 minutes later, Sophie's replacement BMW joined him. Apparently, she'd managed to secure new transportation faster than ordering replacement parts for heavy equipment. But here's where it got really interesting. Adrian didn't leave. Not at 11, not at midnight, not at 1 a.m. I called Carlos Martinez. I need a favor. You still have that friend who does security installations? Jimmy? Yeah, why? I need some surveillance equipment. Nothing illegal, just standard security cameras that happen to have very good zoom capabilities. Jake Rodriguez, what are you planning? Insurance. The kind that protects you when people try to rewrite history like a falsified maintenance log. The next morning, I used my equipment access credentials, a perk of doing maintenance for half the commercial properties downtown, to install 3 small cameras in the parking garage. Nothing fancy, just motion-activated units that would upload footage to a secure cloud server. The same technology we use to monitor equipment theft at construction sites. Within 48 hours, I had everything I needed. The footage was damning. Not just Sophie and Adrian meeting regularly at Rachel's place, but Rachel herself participating in their little strategy sessions. I watched through my laptop as the 3 of them sat around Rachel's dining table, documents spread between them like blueprints for a demolition job, planning what looked like a coordinated attack on my reputation and finances. The audio quality wasn't perfect, but I caught enough fragments to understand their strategy. They were planning to claim I'd been abusive, that I'd hidden assets, that my sudden generosity to charities was actually a scheme to avoid paying alimony. Rachel was coaching Sophie on how to present herself as a victim, while Adrian was providing financial projections about my supposed hidden wealth. But the real revelation came on Thursday night. I watched Adrian and Rachel embrace in the parking garage through my telephoto lens. Not a friendly hug, but a passionate kiss that lasted nearly a minute. When they separated, I could read Rachel's lips clearly through the camera's zoom function. She has no idea. Sophie wasn't just being betrayed by her husband. She was being betrayed by her lover and her best friend, who were apparently planning to cut her out of whatever scheme they'd concocted, like replacing a defective component in a complex system. I sat back in my chair, processing this new information with the methodical precision of a diagnostic technician. Sophie thought she was the puppet master, pulling strings and manipulating outcomes. In reality, she was just another mark in a con game run by people who saw her as a useful tool with access to legal resources and a wealthy husband. For the first time since this whole mess started, I almost felt sorry for her. The feeling passed quickly, like the momentary sympathy you might feel for a machine before you realize it's beyond repair. I opened a new email account and began composing a message to the city's most popular gossip blog, Riverside Confidential. They specialized in exposing the private scandals of public figures, and their anonymous tip line was legendary among people who understood the power of strategic information release. The subject line read, "Exclusive. Prominent attorney's love triangle involves fraud, betrayal, and blackmail." I attached selected video clips, carefully edited to protect my own involvement while maximizing the damage to all 3 conspirators. The story would write itself. Respected lawyer caught in affair with client. Best friend orchestrating elaborate con game. Everyone lying to everyone else. I hit send and leaned back to wait for the fireworks, knowing that once this information entered the public domain, it would spread through social media faster than hydraulic fluid from a blown seal. The Riverside Confidential story broke at 6 a.m. on Friday morning with the subtlety of a demolition blast. The headline read, "Love Triangle Scandal, Attorney Sophie Rodriguez caught in web of deception with real estate agent and PR executive." By 8 a.m., my phone was ringing constantly. I ignored the calls from Sophie, Rachel, and several numbers I didn't recognize, probably reporters looking for comment. The only call I answered was from Maya. "Dad, what the hell is going on? There are photographers outside Mom's office and someone at school showed me this crazy article about her." "Maya, listen to me carefully. Don't talk to any reporters. Don't answer questions from strangers. And don't go anywhere alone today. Can you stay with your friend Sarah's family this weekend? This is about the divorce, isn't it? Dad, what did you do?" The accusation in her voice stung like metal shavings in an open cut, but I kept my tone calm and measured. "I didn't write that article, sweetheart. I just stopped protecting people who didn't deserve protection." After hanging up, I drove to Carlos's equipment yard for what I hoped would be a normal workday. Instead, I found Adrian Walsh waiting for me in the parking lot, leaning against his damaged Tesla like some kind of movie villain. The sugar in the oil system had finally done its work. The engine was making the distinctive grinding sound of seized bearings. "We need to talk," he said as I got out of my truck. "Do we? I thought you'd said everything you needed to say at the country club." Adrian's usual polished demeanor was cracking like metal under excessive stress. His suit was wrinkled, his hair uncombed, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "You think you're clever, don't you? Destroying people's lives with your little computer tricks." "I think I'm a man who got tired of being lied to." I started walking toward the yard entrance. "If you'll excuse me, I have actual work to do." Adrian grabbed my arm, spinning me around with the desperation of someone whose carefully constructed world was collapsing. "This isn't over. You have no idea what you're dealing with." I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back at his face with the calm assessment of a technician evaluating a failed component. "Take your hand off me," I said quietly. "Or what? You'll run crying to your lawyer?" Instead of answering, I drove my knee up into his solar plexus, doubling him over as he gasped for air like a diesel engine starved of fuel. I grabbed his shoulders and slammed him back against his damaged Tesla, the impact echoing through the parking lot. "Let me explain something to you, Adrian. I spent 4 years in the Army before I became a heavy equipment mechanic. I've been working with my hands for 20 years, and right now, I'm running on about 3 hours of sleep and a lot of suppressed rage." I leaned closer, my voice dropping to a whisper. "So, when I tell you to take your hands off me, it's not a request." I released him and stepped back. Adrian straightened slowly, his face flushed with humiliation and anger. "This isn't over," he repeated, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yes, it is. Your real estate license is suspended, your clients are fleeing, and your reputation is destroyed. Go find a new city to infest." As I walked away, I heard the Tesla's engine attempt to start, then the grinding sound of metal on metal as the seized bearings finally gave up completely. Behind me, Adrian's curses echoed across the equipment yard like the death rattle of failed machinery. The Riverside Children's Hospital Charity Gala was the social event of the season, where the city's elite gathered to write tax-deductible checks and be seen doing good. I hadn't planned to attend, but when I learned that Sophie, Adrian, and Rachel would all be there, apparently trying to salvage their reputations through public displays of charity, I decided to make a final appearance. I arrived late, after the dinner, but before the auction, wearing my best tuxedo and carrying a laptop bag that drew curious glances from security. A generous donation to the hospital's equipment fund had secured me a spot on the evening's program as a special presentation. The grand ballroom of the Riverside Hotel was packed with 500 of the city's most influential residents. I spotted my targets immediately. Sophie sat at a table near the back, looking pale and drawn in a black evening gown. Adrian was across the room, his left arm in a sling from his Tesla accident, glad-handing potential clients who seemed less than enthusiastic about his attention. Rachel held court near the bar, her smile bright and brittle as she worked damage control on her remaining relationships. None of them had seen me yet. The hospital's development director, Mrs. Anderson, approached the podium for the evening's final presentation. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special treat tonight. Jake Rodriguez, one of our most generous supporters and an equipment specialist, has prepared a presentation about the importance of integrity in charitable giving." I walked to the front of the room, connecting my laptop to the projection system as conversations gradually died down. Sophie had spotted me now, her face draining of color like hydraulic fluid from a catastrophic leak. Adrian was pushing through the crowd toward the exit, but the ballroom doors had been closed for the presentation. "Good evening," I said into the microphone, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system, with the confidence of someone who'd briefed construction crews on the complex equipment operations. "Thank you all for being here tonight, supporting such an important cause. I want to talk to you about trust, transparency, and the importance of knowing who you're really dealing with." The first slide appeared on the massive screens flanking the stage, a photo of Sophie, Adrian, and Rachel at a restaurant, clearly intimate and conspiratorial. These three individuals have been running a sophisticated con game on this community for months. Tonight, I want to show you exactly how they operate. The room erupted in whispers and gasps. Mrs. Anderson moved toward the stage, but I held up a hand with the authority of a foreman managing a dangerous operation. "Mrs. Anderson, I promise this is relevant to charitable accountability. Please give me 5 minutes." The next slide showed financial documents, carefully redacted to protect privacy, but clearly showing the pattern of deception. Sophie Rodriguez, a respected attorney, has been using her position to facilitate questionable real estate deals with her lover, Adrian Walsh. Meanwhile, Rachel Torres has been orchestrating a media campaign to destroy anyone who threatens their operation. I clicked to the next slide. Surveillance footage from Rachel's parking garage, showing Adrian and Rachel in their passionate embrace. But here's where it gets interesting. While Sophie thought she was part of a team, her boyfriend and best friend were planning to cut her out of their scheme entirely. Sophie stood up, her chair scraping against the floor like metal grinding against concrete. "Stop this. You can't do this." "I can, and I am. You see, ladies and gentlemen, these three people have spent months planning to defraud me in divorce court, using false accusations and fabricated evidence. They've destroyed reputations, violated professional ethics, and betrayed everyone who trusted them." The next slide showed text messages between Rachel and Adrian, discussing their plans to manipulate Sophie and split the proceeds from my supposed hidden assets. Adrian finally reached the side of the stage, his face red with rage. "You son of a bitch! I'll sue you for everything you have." "With what? Your suspended real estate license? Your non-existent reputation? Your girlfriend's bankrupt marketing firm?" I smiled down at him with the satisfaction of watching a perfectly executed demolition. "Please enlighten us about your legal strategy." Security was moving toward the stage now, but the crowd was riveted. Phones were out, recording everything, uploading it to social media in real time. "The beautiful thing about the truth," I continued, "is that it doesn't need spin or management or careful presentation. It just needs sunlight." Adrian tried to climb onto the stage with his good arm, but his dress shoes slipped on the polished steps. He tumbled backward, landing hard on the ballroom floor in a tangle of limbs, formal wear, and wounded pride. The crowd gasped, then began to murmur as he struggled to get up, his dignity as shattered as his schemes. I looked out at the audience, making eye contact with Sophie one final time. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks, her carefully constructed facade finally cracking completely like overstressed metal. "Sophie," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the microphone, "you wanted someone at your level. You thought I was weak, that I was beneath you, that I would just quietly disappear when you were done with me." I paused, letting the silence stretch like the moment before a controlled demolition. "Welcome to the basement.